Thanksgiving Day, I guess Black Friday, right? If you're out there buying anything and everything up, that's what we have behind us here. We're all set and ready for whatever gift-giving holiday that you celebrate in the month of December. Hopefully you have stocked up and you're ready to go. Guess what? You're going to see the same people that you just ate dinner with again in about, a month from today. So gear up. They're going to be expecting prizes and gifts and everything else. And maybe you just throw on a nice little three-leg parlay like I'm doing. That's like a little ornament that we have here today for you in the NBA. So what are we going to do? We're going to ask in return that you gift us a thumbs up and a subscription. It's free, by the way, to subscribe here on the Odd Shopper channel. So we appreciate that many times over. Also, by the way, I have something at BetMGM where you can turn 10 into 200. That's $10 into 200. But let's just build a nice, easy three-leg parlay, and maybe we'll get greedy here. Just maybe we'll get greedy here. I'm going to get rid of that for just 1 second. Let's start with the Philadelphia 76ers taking on the Orlando Magic, and we got them at plus 3.5, and that has since dipped to plus 2.5. Hey, you got that at 4 if you were part of the Discord where your first week is free. There's a link below that, by the way. Sixers at 3.5, now down to 2. I mean, come on. This is a team that's really well coached from like the fifth man on the squad down. This is a team that has a really good bench. They are the rich man's version right now, at least, without James Harden, Tyrese Maxey, Joel Embiid. They are the rich man's version of the Orlando Magic. They're just a better team. They have Tobias Harris. Orlando Magic do not. That's what it really should come down to. The Philadelphia 76ers have a combination of Tobias Harris and DeAnthony Melton with a defensive presence like PJ Tucker. That's where the difference is. So hard for me to think that the Philadelphia 76ers slip up. Their slip up was after the Brooklyn game where they just had nothing against the Charlotte Hornets. By the way, they're not going to make the program here, but Charlotte plus 4.5, not a bad little solo play. I want as many points as I can get on the road because it's the NBA, and it's the NBA. And it's a crazy, drunk, wild, lawless land in which we bet, but we choose to live this life, and we'll take the Sixers at plus 3.5 to start things off. Now, let's move on down to this Jazz game. The Utah announcements coming down that they plan. Well, I'll hold off on that final game for just 1 second. We're going to move to the Jazz at plus 7.5. Love Utah in this spot. Really getting anything more than a bucket here. Warriors are so up and down with who's playing, who's not. And it's a difficult thing to jump ahead early in the day. You're waiting for news. You're waiting for information. You're trying to gather here. We haven't quite figured out if anybody's sitting and whatnot, but the Jazz, I think, are not, unless somebody is out, and Mike Conley is going to be the one that everybody's going to have their eye on, I think, primarily right now with this Jazz team from an injury standpoint. But, you have this announcement that comes out, Clarkson, Markkanen, they're all going to stick around here. You had a big game on Wednesday from the bench, Malik Beasley stepping up. I think you're going to have a hard-fought Jazz team that on the road should be looked at like any other good team in the NBA. 7.5. Like, think about a playoff game, maybe you're getting 7.
On this New Mexico game.
We're gonna spend 55 minutes on that and 5 minutes on the other team.
Yeah, so here's what it's gonna look like. If you do how does this look, Mike? Is this better? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
put my hood up. Can't do that, but you know what I can do? I can declare us live, not on Saturday. We can talk a little Friday football post-Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving the day after. I'm sure there's a name for that, but this is Week 13, Friday live before lock college football here at Stokastic. We got 11 games to break down. I am Ben Rasa. That is Matt Gajewski, who joins me as he always does. You survived Thanksgiving. Great time for sports. We had one college football game yesterday, the Egg Bowl. But now we're treated to a full slate of games on a Friday. You got to love that on the post-Turkey Day.
Yeah, man. It's one of my favorite days of the entire year. Really my favorite weekend because it's not just one main slate. We get two of them. Massive tournament today. They call it the Thanksgiving hangover, and that's not my language. That is the official DraftKings language. I'm excited for it. And, man, we start off right away with a banger in Tulane. Real good football in that game, and it's awesome throughout.
It's a great slate of games. There's no doubt about it. The cool thing about this, we get some teams that unless you're playing short slates, I'm not sure that we've seen more than once, and that might be generous, on slates. And that's kind of cool. We get a chance to talk about some of these teams that don't get a lot of love from the MAC, from the Mountain West, and we're going to do just that. I do want to say, of course, we're going to talk about No House Advantage sponsoring the show, and we'll get into them later in the show. But you told me before the show, and I want to ask you about this, 4 running backs, potentially the chalk build today.
I was going to say, what did I say before the show?
You said a lot of dangerous things, but that one we can say on air.
It might be a chalk running back build, and we'll talk about everything game by game. But one thing you guys will quickly realize is that it's not a great quarterback slate. There's a lot of teams that are dealing with either injuries or quarterback platoons, which you see sometimes in these conferences like the MAC, and there's a couple of MAC games on the slate. But it's not just that. The studs we do have are priced way, way up. So a lot of times in your Superflex, you're having to make decisions like, okay, do I want to pay $9K for Drake May, $9.4K for DTR, or would I rather go down and pay $7K for Raheem Sanders? And normally that's not much of a decision point. But today, I think it's a lot more viable to go 4 running backs. Pricing very, very tight. And people in the chat seem to be on this already.
Yeah, pricing definitely tight, not as much. So we're going to try to see what we can do, see how we can construct these lineups. And let's get to it. We've got our first game, Baylor, 8.5-point dogs, playing Texas, 55-point total. Somehow, some way, we talked about this over on the Odd Shopper channel, Betting You. Shout out to Betting You, our betting podcast. Texas still, they need some help, but they actually have some stuff to play for potentially. So this is not a game where they're coming in lifeless and Baylor's Baylor. Let's start with Baylor on the other side, though. We've seen them at times run the ball a ton with Reese, then not so much. How do you think they attack Texas, and what are the spots you're targeting?
Yeah, I think Reese's workload largely dependent on injuries to players around him. They're now fully healthy with Craig Williams and then Quaylon Jones. He's their pass catching back. This is a GPP situation because they do run the ball a ton, especially when they're ahead. They have a 43% pass rate, and they're explosive when they do run. This Baylor team's very strong in the trenches. Unfortunately, game script doesn't match up here. Trench warfare, they're not going to have an advantage because Texas is also very strong up front. So these are just pure dicey GPP options, especially Reese, who's now priced up at 5,900. You'll just find better values. In the receiving game, Monterey Baldwin is kind of a pay up to be contrarian as well. He does have double-digit targets in back-to-back games, and he's an explosive playmaker. But you're also riding the ebbs and flows of Blake Shapen if you do target a pass catcher here. He'll throw some of the best throws you've ever seen, and then he'll throw some of the most head-scratching throws you've ever seen. And ultimately, it's still more of a game managerial role for him. So Baylor's stacks are pretty tough to get to. And then everybody's cheap value play last week, Josh Cameron, after he ran a majority of the routes 2 weeks ago, routes dropped back down about to 50%, making even him very hard to target. There's not even like a quality value piece here. So I do not have a single Baylor player in any of my lineups. And today I am running 76.
So yeah, no Cameron, no Presley, none of these dart throws towards the bottom of the receiving range?
None.
Well, that makes it easy. Anything on the other side? I imagine there's going to be more to talk about when we talk about Texas. So we know that Quinn Ewers at times have shown something. I think it's been an underwhelming season. Bijan is coming off the old 25 carries for 243 yards on the ground and just 4 touchdowns. That's not bad. And then on the outside, Worthy, Withington, Sanders, you assume 8.5-point home favorites. The majority of the points in this game do come from the Longhorn side.
Yeah, man. How good is Bijan?
He's quite good.
He's awesome.
Best running back in the country?
I think so, man. Especially when you consider, you talked about what he did on the ground. We didn't even talk about him through the air. He's averaging nearly 30 receiving yards per game. Like, for reference, there's only 2 players on Baylor averaging more receiving yards per game than Bijan Robinson, which is, he's sick, man. He's priced up though at 9,300 on a tight slate. He's been a guy that has been left out in a lot of my lineups. I'm definitely not fading him. I'll pull up my exposure right now to him as we speak. It's right around 10%, so it's not a ton. And the reason is he's 9,300. And you look to the other players at the position, you save money by going to Charbonnet, to Valladay, to Sanders, to the MAC running backs, and all of them have similar workloads. So maybe the efficiency isn't there, but you can get the same amount of volume in similar game scripts at cheaper prices than Bijan. So on a really tight slate, I think you just need to be careful about the opportunity cost with him, but you can't poke any holes. He's the best running back in the country for a reason.
On the outside, I mean, again, we can talk about Ewers if you want. It's not the best quarterback situation in general. And then again, 3 guys on the outside, Sanders at 49, all the way up to Worthy at 6,600. How do you see the passing game being able to succeed against Baylor? And is this a spot worth targeting?
They're cheap, especially on FanDuel. You're going to get a lot of Whittington and Sanders just because they're extremely cheap over there. They're both priced up now compared to where we've seen them previously. So they're kind of just neutral values, in my opinion. Texas is not a team I'll stack, especially in the pass game, because Ewers has been so bad recently. He's at risk of benching, honestly, at this point in the season. Hudson Card has been straight up better than him in a lot of advanced metrics. And I'm not sure if they're willing to pull the plug on Ewers, but at some point you have to at least consider that. So it's 7K. You can find better options than Ewers. He doesn't run at all either. Negative rushing yards. But if you want to play a one-off pass catcher, no issues with it. And especially on FanDuel, that's where I'm trying to get most of my Texas exposure through the air.
Do you have any teams? Are you comfortable with having multiple Texas players without Ewers in the same lineup?
You're going to get it on FanDuel. I really tried to limit it though. I don't want a ton of it just because there's some really good spots on this slate.
Would you rather have Bijan or Charbonnet in cash?
Charbonnet.
Yeah, I would say Charbonnet too. They're in a good spot against Cal. They're the last game, but
yeah, and you save $1,000, which goes a long way.
Anything else from this opening game on the docket?
Not too much. I know we ran through it pretty quickly, but there's some other games that are just more exciting. And
yeah, I mean,
some games that aren't exciting on paper, like we're probably going to have to spend a lot of time on the Iowa game just because they're so cheap.
In New Mexico.
Yeah.
That's the first
That'll
time
be a fun one.
Slate. That's going to be something. I didn't bet this game either. Did you bet Texas?
I did not.
You did not. Okay. I do want to ask you, because again, we have 11 games, so we'll have some time for some of these type of questions. Are you taking every team at face value in terms of players sitting? We just had a question about like Sharps and DTR. They really don't have much to play for. Unless you hear something, you're going to assume a full workload for everyone that's out there.
Yeah, unless there's a trend where they've like shown it in the past. And like some of these guys, they don't have much of an NFL future. Like DTR is not an NFL player. So if anything, it might be the opposite for him. Like some of these guys might just give it their all if it is their last hurrah. Charbonnet, he definitely has an NFL future, so he doesn't fit the bill. But like a couple of these guys, even though it's their last game, I wouldn't be too worried about it. And we'll talk about the spots where it is worrisome.
I feel the same way. I think that if you start playing that game, it can get tricky. And unless there is a real substantiated data point from the past or just in general, I'm not going to worry about it either. I know, yeah, there are a lot of people are banged up at this point. I still think if they're out there, they're out there. But we'll talk about it and we'll see if we can get some news as well. And that's where late swap is super important. That's why our Discord is very important as well. All right, let's get to the second game. This is where, right off the bat, these are teams that I would say the average person, even if they watch the show, are unfamiliar with. I know for me, if you rank the number of games that I've seen from Utah State and Boise State, be much lower than some of these other squads. It's a big spread, 16.5 points. Talk to me about Utah State. I saw them at times, and I mean, they look good against Air Force, sadly, but that was a long time ago. What do they do? How do they attack? And can they have any success against Boise State?
So going way back, this was a team that made a coaching change, and they've kind of gone from an air raid style to the exact opposite. This team's very run heavy now. They have a 42% pass rate, but they're still playing with pace. They're 23rd in the country in seconds per play. They've had to change quarterbacks a lot this year. Their starter coming into the year was Logan Bonner. He's a pure packet passer. They've since adapted their offense to Cooper Lagasse at 5,600. He's mobile. He's really mobile. The issue here is they're 16.5-point underdog, 17 in some spots. In Boise State's best quality is their defense, especially their run defense. They're very good up front, and Cooper Lagasse is going to be running into one of the tougher matchups he'll face this year. So he's a player I don't have a lot of, but I do think this team tries to attack on the ground. And where they become interesting is they're super tight, especially in their skill position players. They don't rotate anybody. So the guy I want to talk about, Calvin Tyler at 6K, he's going to be unowned, but he had 30 carries last week, and he had 25 the week before. Their change of pace back, Robert Briggs, did not play last week. You're probably not going to get news on his injury status just because of the caliber school Utah State is. And that's the case with a lot of schools like Utah State in the MAC today. But if you're going to give me 30 touches at 6K for no ownership, I know they're massive underdogs, but this at least needs to be considered.
No doubt the volume is going to be there. You mentioned that he's got that backfield to himself. What about Cobbs on the outside? Again, a name we're not familiar with. Big time showing, or is that chasing a box score from last time out?
No, the guy averages nearly 10 targets per game. He averages 70 receiving yards, which is pretty efficient. Again, it's a tough matchup, but this team's going to be down. You could project their pass rate maybe a little higher than it's been on the year. And Brian Cobbs is a legit player. He's a Maryland transfer, excuse me. The only issue is pricing here, but like if you're playing this slate and you're just running projections, you're going to get Boise players to kind of shave off some ownership, play the correlation game. I don't hate using some Utah State guys as runbacks. So Cobbs is a little more expensive. Like in this price range, you're going to get Cal receivers, you're going to get Arizona receivers, but like he hasn't seen any fewer than 8 targets in 4 straight games. Cobbs is viable. Terrell Vaughn, he had 9 targets last week. He's viable. Justin McGriff, he plays every single snap. 6 targets last week. These guys are playable for sure.
And you're comfortable. It's almost the same question as I asked you for Texas in some regards. Do you anticipate having any Tyler and Cobbs alone, just two without any quarterback?
This is where I wouldn't, because their implied team total is so low. It's just 17. I'm using Utah State mostly on the other side of Boise State guys. And the goal there is to just shave off ownership and play the correlation game. Hope this game goes above the 51.5 total, which it's not bad on this slate. If you just look at the context of the whole slate, you've got the Arizona game way ahead of everything else. And then, like 51's not drastically lower than most of the other games. So I'm okay game stacking this.
We talked about that quarterback isn't the strongest position today. Taylon Green at 66, he's going to head up this Boise attack. Cash viable, firm play. Where does he fall on the priority list of the quarterbacks?
Yeah, he's solid. I think he's going to be a solid GPP pivot. So on quarterback today, you're either getting Drake May or Jaden DeLora, or you're going down into this range, which is basically 6K to 6.6K with Taylon Green at the top. And they're all similar quarterbacks. They're pseudo game managers with rushing ability, which is Taylon Green to a T. He's very mobile. He actually rushed for 100 yards in each of his first 2 appearances this year. The only problem is if they slaughter opponents, they take the ball out of his hands. Like instead of running Taylon, they're going to run Halani. They're going to run Genty instead of Taylon Green if they're killing their opponent, which is a risk here. They're 17-point favorites. But if it's competitive, you'll see more attempts for Taylon. You'll see more rushing attempts designed for him. Last week, he had 10, but the prior 3 weeks, he had 8 combined. So you can kind of see how this ebbs and flows depending on the game for Taylon. And I'm playing him largely with a Utah State player, hoping that Utah State keeps it more competitive and this game doesn't play to the 17-point spread. And then we can access the rushing equity with Taylon.
So if you do that, are you looking to attach someone like Caples on the outside? Are you saying I want Green for his rushing upside? I'll play him naked with, a run back on the Utah State side. or are you attaching pass catchers for Boise, or even like Halani and trying to consolidate like 75% of the rushing yards?
I would rather stack him with a running back, as crazy as that is, but their implied team total is 34. It's not crazy. And it's a pricing thing with the receivers. I actually think they're fine players. Like, I think Cobbs is fine. I think Caples is fine. But at 6K and 5,800, you can do a lot better than those players. And none of them are averaging more than 5.5 targets this year. So you can tell that's a product of being slower, still a run-heavy attack, and then very little upside as well. And Talon accesses his ceiling on the ground, like you mentioned. So Halani is actually a pretty decent pass catcher for this team. He averages 15 yards per game through the air, 2.5 targets. And then you're accessing just a massive carry workload for Halani. He is a bit expensive, so he kind of fits into the Bijan Robinson category where I'm not getting a ton of him. I'm getting more of like Charbonnet and some of the other running backs, Valladay, but I certainly have a fair amount of him. I'm going to check on the back end and see if I have any of them together. I don't think I do, but I'll double check.
Yeah, I mean, listen, this is a team with a sizable team total in the sense of the majority of the points in a low total game are going to come from the Boise State side. It's not a shootout, but if Utah State can keep pace even a little bit, you're going to see the volume for this. We know what Boise State wants to do. They're, in my opinion, a low variance team. They're going to run the ball. They've got a mobile quarterback. Is there any kind of dart throws for this team, or are we kind of sticking to the main, production guys on this offense?
Yeah, no dart throws. Their wide receiver 3, Billy Bones, is at 5,700, so it's just not even a consideration.
Not even a consideration. Get him out of here. Okay. We're moving on to one of the many great games on this slate. I will say, chat, even on a Friday, awesome to see everyone. You want to support us? It's been an awesome year. Hit that like button. We appreciate it. We're going to go through all your questions, of course. It's good to see a lot of familiar faces to talk about Tulane and Cincy. Big time game with big time implications. And we'll start with Tulane, who's an awesome team. I really like their quarterback in Pratt. I want to hear about where, if he's in play, it's a consolidated team. Spears gets his, and then you've got some guys on the outside. But when you look at Tulane and you look at what they're doing, it's a toss-up type of game. It's a pretty methodical total. Are these guys in play for DFS, or is it just a solid team, but on the outside looking in?
Definitely in play for DFS. The biggest concern is the game environment. The under has been just getting smashed this week. On Monday, it was 47. It's down to 44 right now. And that's the biggest factor, I think. And that probably comes from the Cincinnati side. We'll talk about why. But ultimately, neither team is projected for more than 22.5 points, which is just going to cap your upside, especially for Pratt at 7,300. But the efficiency is off the charts with Pratt. Okay, let's just talk about the Cincinnati side quick and why the total's coming down. It's because Ben Bryant's hurt. So you've got an unknown quarterback coming in for Cincinnati. But let's just say he's good. And if this plays above the total, Pratt's efficiency is awesome. The guy's an amazing passer. His volume's just really low. He only throws it 27 times a game. But if this gets into any type of shootout potential, Pratt has a massive ceiling. And he's also very mobile. 317 yards on the ground. I think Pratt's an excellent GPP play. And it's gotten slightly easier to stack him. And I would use Shea Wyatt if you're doing this. His route rate jumped above 70% last week. Targets didn't really follow suit, but he leads the team in receiving. And it's a rotation of like 6 players. So if I am stacking somebody with him, I just want the consolidated routes and Wyatt. Otherwise, this game is the showdown. You'll get a lot of other guys. I would rank them Wyatt 1, Jaquan Jackson 2 because of price, and then Deuce Watts 3 for the showdown if you guys are playing that.
I want to take you. Well, let's finish. Do you want to talk about anything else from the Tulane side? Because this is a game you mentioned. I want to drill down into the Cincy quarterback situation. But from Tulane, who's your priority from the team? Is there anyone else that you really want to mention?
The favorite play for me would be Spears. Haven't mentioned him yet. His workload's been down a bit recently, but they've just been slaughtering teams, and he's been extremely efficient, like over 100 yards easily last week on just 13 carries. When the going is tough for them, we've seen him well above 20 carries. And if you go back to his 5th most recent game, his 4th most recent game, well above 20 touches. This is a game where they're going to have to put all their chips down. Yep. I would expect Spears to be in a more voluminous role similar to what we saw midseason. So he's an excellent tournament play.
So on the other side of this game, you mentioned that Ben Bryant is out. Evan Prater is a guy that I don't keep stats on this for obvious reasons. I would venture we've mentioned him more than a handful of times over the year, even though he's not someone who's played, just because of kind of him, the recruiting pedigree, and just the fact that he got beat out by Brent Bryant. It's my first question for you is it's definitely him today, right?
Yep, I'm pretty sure it's him.
Okay. And then what do you make of him? Now we got a little sample size against Temple, but I'm not sure that's overly indicative. He had 9 carries on the ground. Didn't look overly dual threat, but he could move a little bit. Do you think that Evan Prater is in play, or is this just kind of accessing to how much Tulane's volume would be?
Yeah, I think he's going to be chalk. He's projected very well on some other sites, and I can't really see why. Like, I understand he should be projected, I think, in the same range as Brady Cook and Talon Green, but I don't think he should be projected significantly better. And first of all, the total's low, so it's like you're not accessing a lot of touchdowns with him. Second, he's extremely unproven. And from a recruiting pedigree, this is the highest recruit in Cincinnati program history per some recruiting services. But it's now multiple years now where he hasn't been able to beat out signal callers. And at first, Desmond Ridder played ahead of him. That's justified. But Ben Bryant coming back to Cincinnati, beating out Evan Prater, is a major concern. The one redeeming quality he has, mobility. He's extremely mobile, and we could see like a Brady Cook, Talon Green type rushing floor from him. And I think that's where the projection on other sites are coming from. But at the end of the day, we're still projecting a really small sample with Prater moving forward. So I am going to play him. I think you probably use him in cash because he's going to be highly owned and he's cheaper than the other guys. But he doesn't come without risk. And it's not just his unknown pedigree. It's the total and poor game environment as well. And not to mention, Tulane is just the stone nuts for a G5 defense. This defense is electric.
Tulane's a good team. Tulane, I mean, you can do this with a lot of teams. They're a couple bounces away from, I mean, you could even say being undefeated potentially. Like they beat Kansas State.
They should be undefeated.
Yeah. Southern Miss, like, come on. They're
they
better
outgained Southern Miss by 200 yards.
Yeah. It's a team that has had an awesome year. I'm not sure that Prater is going to be overly effective in this spot, to be honest. So I get it, but Slim just said, I'm still going Cook over Prater in cash. Don't love it though. I think that's fair. I think you can do that.
100% agree. I'm not playing cash today, but I think I would probably do that.
Yeah. I'm with you. All right. We got 3 games down. We got plenty more to go, but we always talk about ways to make some money, and No House Advantage is one of those ways. It's a site that sponsored us all year. They've been awesome. I've seen a lot of new people sign up over there. Really enjoy it. And if you're going to do that, you're going to get $50 first match deposit bonus when you use the link in the description. Use that promo code Stokastic. You haven't been over there. First of all, we have tools. We've got our lineup generator, and we've got all the things that you need to be successful. But what are you doing over there? You're playing in pick'em contests versus other people, or you can play versus the house. You're projecting over, under various guys' stat lines. And we've got the tools to do that. Obviously, Matt, your projections and everything. And there's some big names over there. I know Drake May is on the slate over there. I like the over on him. You've got Downs as well. We just talked about Spears, or even a guy like Scott on Cincinnati. I think that Spears could have a really big day. Over 100 rushing yards seems more than attainable. So these are the things that we've been talking about all day, and we're going to continue to talk about over with No House Advantage. So I just want to give them a shout out. Again, sponsoring the show. Get that $50. Sign up over there. Try it out. A lot of overlay, a lot of different formats. You can get up big time multipliers if you string together a handful of these props and you get them right. We've seen it before. Bet up to 5-player props, over-unders, or individual matchups. And it's not just college football, all the sports that you want. So shout out to No House Advantage. Get over there. Take advantage. Now, we're going to the MAC. It's not Tuesday, but we're going to the MAC. Central Michigan, Eastern Michigan. I bet this game because of you, and I feel pretty good about it. The line's been bouncing all over. At one point, both teams were plus 1.5 on various sites. So it's just no one knows what to do. It's a pseudo pick'em. Pretty decent total. Let's start with Central Michigan. They stink. They're terrible. I've seen them play. They should even be worse. They should have lost to Akron. I'll take that to my grave. What are we doing? Lou Nichols is a name, at times we've seen him have like 30 carries in a game, but then not so much. Is he still a premier running back? Is he the focal point of this offense, or have they moved on to other things?
I think he's hurt. So he's missed a bunch of games recently, and he returned from injury last week, only carried 10 times.
Yeah, 10 times.
They've been using this electric freshman, Burt Emanuel, who's actually a quarterback, but he essentially runs the Wildcat out there and nothing else. single digit pass attempts last week, but 18 carries. And I can't fault them. He's been electric on the ground. But ultimately, let's start with quarterback for this team. We don't know who's going to play, and we don't know what amount of snaps. They've used 3 guys at this position. And unfortunately, Burt Emanuel would be playable if he didn't have that quarterback tag. I don't know how many snaps he plays, and you cannot use him in a flex spot. It has to be either super flex or quarterback. And without any passing upside, I think it's just a lot of risk to be taking on. And then the same thing with Bauer and Richardson, a lot of risk with either of them. So I'm not playing any quarterbacks. Lou Nichols, I think I'm going to sprinkle here and there. This guy averages 25 touches when he's healthy per game. But we don't know that he's going to see that workload now that they have Burt Emanuel in the fold. So this is very risky. And I checked the redshirt status on Emanuel. This will be his 4th game. So he can play in this game, no penalties. There's nothing to worry about there. He's going to play because this team's not bowl eligible. So that's a risk. And I would not be trying to load up on Central. I would not be focusing your lineups on this spot. And one last thing, with the quarterback change to both Bauer and Burt Emanuel, their pass rate is plummeted. On the year, they have a 50% pass rate. That's not indicative of what they've done in recent weeks. Last week, they had single-digit targets to receivers. There were only 9 passes that actually made it to receivers. This team is close to being just an X-out spot outside of the contrarian Lou Nichols or Burt Emanuel.
What a weird situation with this Burt Emanuel guy. I mean, when you look at the numbers, they jump like off the page. Like he almost had 300 yards rushing in a game. Like, what are we doing? But
and they play that snow game. It's been really weird for them.
Yeah, really, really odd. And Chad mentioned, last week Nichols didn't touch the ball until after the first quarter. It's just a weird team in a lot of iterations. Emanuel
also won't hear injury news likely. So
that's true too.
I'm not 100% confident that Lou Nichols will play here. I think he will, but again, this is just my guessing.
I like Eastern Michigan in the spot though.
I bet him twice.
I bet him because of you, and I feel good about it. One of the things with them, I mean, it's not easy to break down as well. Talk to me about their quarterback situation and what do you think is going to happen and who's playable for this offense?
So Austin Smith was in a boot. I don't think we'll see him. That means Taylor Powell plays quarterback. He's actually a better passer. Smith has some mobility, but you're going to see more pass attempts here with Eastern Michigan. And he's not playable himself just because he takes so many sacks. He's like the Jack Plummer of the MAC. He has decent passing stats, but a lot of them are negated by him just taking that negative rushing yardage. But with all the extra pass attempts, this team has awesome receivers. Hassan Beydoun, Tanner Canoe, Dylan Drummond. These are multi-year starters for this team with upside. Central Michigan does play good defense, but they're balanced more towards the run. They have one of the best run defenses in the conference, not the country, certainly not the country, but in the conference. So Hassan Beydoun, Tanner Canoe, these guys could take advantage of it. I want to sprinkle them into GPPs, largely just because I believe they're going to go unowned. People are going to gravitate to the Arizonas, the Arizona States, the UCLAs. Nobody knows who Hassan Beydoun, Tanner Canoe are, but these are all conference caliber players in this conference.
I know you kind of mentioned he has no upside. If we got clarity that it's Powell alone today, any interest in GPP of having him with like 3 pass catchers?
I don't think so, just because even if that happens, and this is the same thing as Cal we'll talk about later, he could put up an awesome stat line, but if he takes like the 6 sacks he normally takes, you're still probably not getting there.
Anything else from this game?
I don't think so. The running back, sorry, we have to talk about Samson Evans. Here are his touch counts. This dude is a monster. 27, 26, 34. We have to consider him because they're favored, not by much, but the total's decent in the mid-50s. And Samson Evans is going to carry the ball 30 times. I don't think people are going to play him because he's on Eastern Michigan.
I mean, the guy scores. He's got 6 touchdowns in the last 3 games. He's got 9 touchdowns over the last 5. And Northern Illinois game doesn't even count because he didn't do anything. But what's not to like? I mean, I assume you're not going to play quarterback anyway, so it's just like kind of just sprinkling him in as a one-off amongst other stacks. He is pretty pricey, but you mentioned running backs very deep today.
I have a lot of him.
Okay. Is he your favorite play in the game?
Yes.
There we go. Hopefully he has 6 touchdowns. That would help me out. That would be great. Anything else? And is this a rivalry game? I asked you that the other day. Is this a rivalry game?
I think so.
Okay. Or Western Michigan. They don't even. Well, they're next, and we'll get to them. Just a second. Couple
Oh,
questions
maybe.
from chat. Favorite cash QB?
Drake May.
Drake May. We'll get to some of these stacks. Do you have a stack that jumps off the page?
Yeah, let me look at my most owned one. Sorry. Wasn't prepared for this.
It's all right.
Yeah, the stack I have the most of, it's mostly Arizona stacks, but I have a lot with Cowing and Delora. McLaughlin's actually tagged onto a lot of those. Got a lot of double stacks of that game.
That's a great game. We're going to get there in just a second. But before that, we got to get to Toledo and Western Michigan. More action. Toledo, pretty solid squad, no doubt about it. And they are the favorite here, rightful favorite, just north of a touchdown against Western Michigan. Let's start with Toledo. So this is a team, like most teams, they've had some different quarterbacks over the year. Finn is still out. Tucker Gleason, I believe, is the man. Is that what we're getting here? And is he playable?
Yeah, that's what we're getting. I think he's similar to your Talon Greens, your Praters, because we have an unknown player here playing for a Toledo offense that is run heavy. First of all, they have a 45% pass rate, but they're still fast, 27th in pace. The redeeming quality for Gleason is it appears he's mobile. We didn't see a major drop off in the way they play. He's not going to see the same amount of designed rush attempts as Daquan Finn, but in the two most recent games we've seen him, he had 6 and 4, which isn't nothing. And then he scrambles a fair amount too. So this is a guy I think that has lively legs. He's not Michael Vick, but he's going to get you something on the ground. And then he's just capitalizing on pace and horrific Western Michigan defense. But one thing we need to consider here is motivation. This team is locked into the MAC championship. They're playing for nothing here. They're going to the MAC championship, regardless if they win, regardless if they run up the score. The total in the game is just 51. It's coming down. So I think this is a spot that we might want to just be a little hesitant with if Toledo tries to just get in, get out.
I haven't seen anything. I haven't seen any confirmation that Finn is out. We just have to keep an eye on it. I don't think he's going to play, but I don't know, to be honest.
I can tell you he was in a walking boot last week, and there's two kinds of walking boots. There's the kind they put on you immediately after the game, where they're just being precautionary. And then there's the kind you have to wear for a while. So he was in a walking boot for over a week, just from their second most recent game where he played and got hurt. And then to still be in a walking boot at the kickoff of last week's game tells you he definitely didn't practice. He was still in a boot the whole week. This is a spot where I would be pessimistic he plays. They're probably just going to try to get him right for the championship next week. But I'm not a doctor. This is my personal speculation. Make sure you do your own research.
Yeah. Definitely want to keep your eye on Twitter and whatnot. Skill position players for Toledo, what stands out? And then we could talk about Western Michigan.
Backfield, it's a three-way committee, but they ride the hot hand. Micah Kelly has been that and everything more in the last two games. 17 and 16 carries at 3,800. This team is still 8.5-point favorites. Western Michigan's defense is atrocious. And I think they're likely to increase their run rate given the circumstances and then playing for the MAC championship already. No reason to show anything but a vanilla game plan here. They're going to put on all the stops next week. So Micah Kelly at 3,800, I think, does make some sense here if you just need a punt play.
On the Western Michigan,
talk about receivers, right?
Yeah, I mean, you can feel free. I don't know. I don't see a ton there, but if you do.
So Jerwan Newton, I think, is going to be fairly popular because his target volume's been awesome lately. There's a couple things that go into that, but it's 9 targets per game over the last 4. He's averaging 61 yards. Again, I think that would be better if Finn played. And then Demir Blankenship missed a lot of time in that span too. He's now back. I think that could shave off some targets. And then my other concern is just pass rate. If they go vanilla, how much does Jerwan Newton actually see? So I'm trying to get a little under on him. The rest of the receivers are all rotational guys. Maddox, Blankenship, Barkley, Zeros. I'm not trying to play much of them.
What is you mentioned Western Michigan's defense is god-awful. Sean Tyler, is there anything on the outside? Crooms, what do they do at quarterback? Is this a team worth playing?
I think a little bit. Trayson Bourget is semi-interesting. Toledo has an awesome defense, but again, how much are they trying? They've settled on Bourget, which I think is their best option, especially for DFS. He has 154 rush yards this year. He's only been the quarterback for about 4 games, so just try to adjust that. Passing yards, he doesn't have a ton of upside here, but he's been efficient in delivering the ball mainly to Corey Crooms, who would be the guy I try to get to, but he's very, very expensive on this slate. I did not get a lot of him. Sean Tyler is a guy I did get a bit of, just as a contrarian piece. Ladarius Jefferson is no longer with the team, so that's really consolidated opportunity for Sean Tyler. You look at the last 4 games, he has touch counts of 24, 26, 19, and 26. Pretty good opportunity. Just worried about game script for him. He's similar to some of the other underdog backs we've talked about, like Utah State back, Calvin Tyler. I think Sean Tyler is firmly in that kind of range.
Arizona and Arizona State. This is going to be one of the games, if you get right, it's going to go a long way into cashing today. Arizona's 4-point favorite, 66-point total. Let's start with the Sun Devils, though. This is a team, Herm Edwards got fired. At one point, they were run heavy. Then this guy's throwing the ball all over the place. Valladay in that backfield. I don't know what to make of this game and of this team and their quarterback. So talk to me about Arizona State and how you think they try to attack a gettable Arizona defense.
Gettable for sure, but they rightfully priced up Trenton Bourget, not Trayson Bourget. Trenton is their quarterback.
Related?
He's not mobile. I don't think so. Spelled different.
Shady. Well, that would be even weirder if they were related then.
Shady for sure, but game total 67. Arizona State implied for over 30 points. I don't think anyone's going to play this pass game, so this is a great way to get contrarian. Their pass rate is still 55%. They have Valladay, but they don't just slam him into the back of the offensive line like the Herm Edwards days. They will pass a little bit. Elijah Badger's their alpha. The guy I'm really interested in is Giovanni Sanders. He got hurt in their second most recent game, warmed up and played a little bit in their last game. He's the wide receiver 2 when healthy. So I just want to make sure he's warming up. He's good to go. But at 3,400, I'm going to use a fair amount of him in this game as a very cheap run back to Arizona when I'm not using Badger and when I'm not using Valladay. And if you're just running one lineup, Valladay is the guy you would want to get. 21 touches per game, 99.5 rush yards per game. Amazing receiver, 25 receiving yards per game. And he's 3rd on the team in targets. So this guy is very clearly involved in the pass game. Even as a slight underdog here, Arizona's defense is bad enough where I'm not really caring about that too much. I'll play a lot of Valladay today.
On the Arizona side, you've already mentioned Delora a couple times. He's 8,100, so he's not cheap by any stretch, but this is a guy that can do a lot. At times, he's had some mobility upside, and he certainly throws the ball all over the place. 300-yard bonus well within his grasp. How big of a priority is he? And then what are you doing with the Arizona pass catchers?
I'm not going to say like locked and loaded, but he's very good. And that's the challenge with this slate. They priced up Delora, so 8,100. You're now having to make a legitimate decision with him. And I think you can still play him. He averages 317 passing yards per game. Arizona State's defense, they're equally as bad as Arizona, as crazy as that is to say. And Delora is semi-mobile. He has 119 rush yards on the ground this year, which is meaningful only in the fact that he's not taking a bunch of sacks and getting you zeros on the ground. He'll give you at least a little bit there and keep the floor high. And he's stackable. This team runs 4 pass catchers in the field every single snap. Same 3 wide receivers, Jacob Cowing, Dorian Singer, and Tetairoa McMillan. All of them are price adjusted to be pretty efficient here. Singer's actually been more efficient. He has more receiving yards than Cowing on fewer targets, but you're getting that locked in target share with Cowing. McMillan's their 3rd option, but still very much in play. He still averages 64 yards per game. And then Tanner McLaughlin, their tight end, plays every single snap. He averages over 4 targets per game, just 39 yards. But you're debating him versus Iowa pass catchers, versus cheap Colorado State pass catchers. So I think he might honestly be the preferred option down there just because your targets are locked in. You're accessing the highest team total on this slate. Team passes nonstop. You're going to get touchdowns. If they fall your way, McLaughlin, I think, is an excellent cheap play.
Singer or Badger in this game?
Singer.
No Cobbs for Boise. Does that make a guy like Bowens upgraded?
No.
Anything else from the spot?
I don't think so.
Arkansas and Missouri. Arkansas is a team that, they've battled through injuries, through a lot. KJ Jefferson was banged up. When they look healthy, they're a really, really good team. There's no doubt about that. And they get a fair matchup with Missouri today. 55-point total. Arkansas is a slight favorite. Sanders, Jefferson, these types on this 11-game slate, where do they fall? And against a Missouri team that's definitely live to cause some problems.
So this is a team with nothing to play for. Locked into their bowl, can't improve. Missouri, on the other hand, needs to win this game for a bowl. So you've seen money come in on the Missouri side. KJ's been playing hurt, so I think there's a chance he might be limited in this game. Maybe he doesn't play at all. Again, just watch and make sure. He's a competitor, so if he's out there, I would expect full KJ. And you know what you're getting. Elite mobility, efficient passing. This team is still up-tempo, so even though their pass rate's 38%, they're fast, 20th in the country in pace. That's giving KJ pretty decent volume, even though it's a very run-heavy team. But ultimately, maybe they decide to go a little more vanilla. We saw that a little bit last week, and it's kind of hard to parse because they got up to a massive lead early. But Raheem Sanders feasted in that kind of game. He's averaging 127.5 rush yards per game, plus what he gives you on the ground. 7K, he's part of the reason why you're not getting a lot of 2 quarterback builds if you're just running optimals. He's an excellent play in this price range. But do they use more AJ Green, Rashad Dubinion? They very well could. And Missouri's still an elite defense. This defense is very good up front. Tough matchup for Sanders for sure. But you're going to get a fair amount of these guys.
Anything on the outside, Hazelwood, Lander types?
Not a ton. I think their stacks are live if you assume the game is more competitive. But the total 55.5 is not great. Volume's not great. No one averages more than 6 targets per game. You're living on pure efficiency and kind of hoping to catch a long one for a score. So I don't love it, but I can see why you would do it if you want to.
Brady Cook on the other side is certainly a name that's going to be in play. He's got serious mobility. Are you running him alone? Are you looking to love it or burden? Is there anything else from Missouri worth talking about?
I'm going to use Cook a lot today. I think he's a great leverage point off Prater. He's mobile, which you mentioned. You can run him naked for sure. 409 rush yards this year. He's also stackable, I think. 29 pass attempts per game, thereabouts. The opposing defense is very weak. They're weak against the run. They allow 4.9 yards per carry, but they're also weak against the pass. 8.3 yards per pass attempt. They've gotten better, but again, motivation's a question. The talent's already a question. I'll use Luther Burden. I'll use some Dominic Lovett. I think these guys are fine. And even like a contrarian Barrett Bannister, assuming he plays, he's questionable. But if he plays 3,800, I think he could be usable as well.
Anything else from Missouri? Again, a competitive game. Looks like that's kind of where we're at here.
Their running back, Cody Schrader, I think he's excellent. They've been trimming the fat from their offense for a while now. We've been talking about this, and he's touched the ball at least 20 times in 3 of the last 4 games. Again, Arkansas is still allowing 4.9 yards per rush attempt. I think sometimes people incorrectly assume they're strong rushing defense because people just talk about their pass being so bad, but they're bad against the run too. They're not good anywhere.
No, they're not. All right. We've got 4 games left. We got about 15 minutes. We're going to be just fine. I do want to say, it's right on the screen. Risk-free bet up to 1K at BetMGM and earn 2-3 months of Stokastic Plus. Link below. That is a link worth clicking. If you are looking to get a new book, if you are looking to get all the tools from all the sports that we have for 2 months, that alone is worth it. Even if you don't care about betting or you just bet casually, why not get 2 free months of Stokastic Plus Platinum when you register at BetMGM and make that first wager? Use the link in the description of this. You click it. All the instructions are there. Once you complete those steps, BetMGM will give us your information, and you're going to get those 2 free months of Stokastic Plus Platinum. It is there along with a picture of me and now a picture of you. Our graphics team doing great work there. Don't remember taking that picture, but there it is. Look at that. It is that simple. 2 free months. Can't say it more. And you get the risk-free bet of up to $1,000. So it's just great opportunities on top of great. And EMAC is here. Aton is here. Look at this. The whole gang on this promo. Fantastic stuff, courtesy of BetMGM. All right, let's get to it. NC State and UNC. North Carolina is a 6.5-point favorite. North Carolina, I don't know what to make of them. We'll talk about them in just a second. Let's talk about NC State first. What is their situation at quarterback? And is this team, even against North Carolina's defense, live to make some noise offensively?
Holy smokes, this team is bad.
It is.
And, oh man, MJ Morris was on the depth chart this week, so I'm guessing he starts. This team has not exactly been forthright in their injury reporting, but he's on the depth chart at least. If he doesn't play, I would X out this team entirely, outside of maybe like a Michael Allen. We'll get to him in a second. But Morris at least kind of gives the offense some life. It gives guys like Thayer Thomas, Keon Lassane some life. I don't love it, but make sure MJ Morris plays. I don't want to play him, but I'm at least more interested in the offense if he's out there. The running game, Demi Sumo Karngbai was not on the depth chart. So I think it's going to be a two-man committee of Jordan Houston, Michael Allen again. The only reason I have any interest in Michael Allen is it's a 50-50 timeshare. He's 4K, and UNC's defense is horrific. And they're a team playing for nothing, locked into the ACC championship. Can't improve their status, burned their college football hopes by losing to Georgia Tech last week. Michael Allen's going to be a pivot off like your Schraders, your Stewarts, whoever your Toledo back at choice is. So I think he's somehow live. And Devin Carter's been out the last couple of weeks for NC State. Again, he was on the depth chart. That doesn't mean he'll play. He was on the depth chart last week. But when he's out, Keon Lassane is a full-time receiver. So at 3,500, he's going to be an excellent pivot off your Iowa guys, whoever your cheap receiver of choice is. Keon Lassane is going to be unowned. That it requires a couple things, though. So you got to really pay attention. It requires MJ Morris to play, and it requires Devin Carter to be out. If one of those things doesn't happen, I don't want any Lassane.
On the other side, you mentioned Drake May. He's 9K. He's been awesome. They lost to Georgia Tech, and that's terrible. But this guy, 34 touchdowns through the air with just 4 picks. He's mobile as well. I mean, what's not to like? My bigger question is it him and Downs? Is it him alone? How do you construct around May?
You can play May naked. I think that's going to be the most common construction just because Downs is a very expensive, very tight slate. So the stack with them both, exceedingly expensive, but you can do it and there's ways to make it work. I have some of it. So I'll play Downs. Antoine Green's the wide receiver too. No guarantee he plays this week, but I can tell you for a fact he's been practicing. So should be a decent sign he's back. He's efficiently priced. The wide receiver 3 is JJ Jones. He's essentially a wind sprinter. And then if Green does miss, you're going to see Gavin Blackwell on the field a ton. He's in the same position as your Keon Lassane. And honestly, I don't hate leaving a roster spot open for one of these guys. I think there's a pretty good chance we get either Lassane or Blackwell today. Don't know who, but I think there's a decent shot.
What about Nesbitt?
He's in a rotation. So the targets are good for him, but Kamari Morales is still playing a decent amount as well. I think it's just kind of noise. Like the tight end position has been targeted a lot recently, but like Downs had 5 targets last week. I would expect that to correct.
Last question, Green or Hampton in that backfield, or just stay away from it?
Green if you're playing one, but I would probably stay away.
Speaking of stay away, New Mexico and Colorado State, 36-point total. The Lobos on the slate. First and last time I'll ever say that. Is there anyone to play for this team?
Christian Washington's 3,100. If you want to hold your nose and play someone.
My God.
Like Colorado State sucks too. That from a betting perspective, I can't believe they're laying 7 points against anybody. So, I mean, this is volatile. If you told me New Mexico won by 7, I would be like, okay. If you told me it plays to the spread, I would also say, okay. Or if you told me Colorado State won by 25, nothing would surprise me here. This game is as volatile. We're talking about 2 of the worst teams in the country on the slate.
It's just, I've seen both these teams play. I've seen New Mexico play quite a bit. That I don't know how they can score more than a handful of points, seriously, in any game. Their best showing was against LSU when they got demolished, but it was at least respectable. The Colorado State side, I think they have a little more firepower. Are you looking at like a Horton on the outside or one of these backs? I can't imagine you're going to the quarterback. What do you see for them as the favorite?
Horton is sort of like your Trey Palmer type play. We've talked about him a lot. He's a great parallel. Terrible offense, but a guy that just gets targeted relentlessly. And he's really efficient. 90 yards per game, 91. He already has 1,000 receiving yards. He's solid. And this team is favored now. Like, this is the best implied team total you're going to see on Colorado State all year. They try to run the air raid. Like, it's just a bad offense, but they're trying. They pass over 50% of the time. It's a attempted air raid offense. So Horton, I think, is fine. Justice Ross Simmons, he's there too. And their 3 is now Lewis Brown because of people opting out of the program and hitting the portal. Lewis Brown at the Stone Min is their wide receiver 3. Routes haven't been good, but if you just need a Stone Min plug your nose type play, he's your guy.
And that's what we got with some of these games, and it's perfect segue because you already mentioned Trey Palmer and you mentioned cheap guys for Iowa. Let's talk about this. Nebraska's a 10.5-point underdog at Iowa. I mean, Iowa's defense and Iowa's special teams are elite. Iowa's offense is a disgrace. Do you want anyone on Nebraska, Trey Palmer, or at least he's got a competent quarterback, but I'm just not sure that's enough here.
Yeah, so Casey Thompson's back. Really tough defense on the other side. With Palmer, I think you're just playing the volume game, and I think that's fine to do. I'm okay with him. Don't love it, but I think he's playable just as the target alpha for this team, and he's the only guy I would get to because their team total is so low and the game environment's so bad.
On the other side, as bad as Iowa's offense is, are the price points giving us some opportunities because the guys that traditionally have the few yards of offense that they generate are hurt? Who's left for Iowa?
So Laporta got hurt. That's going to put Leitchi into play. Don't love it. Nico Regani's there. He's their wide receiver 1. He hasn't seen more than 5 targets in the last 4. These 2 guys are going to be popular as kind of glue guys that fill your lineup out. So play them at your own risk. I'm playing a little bit, but I'm trying to come in under just because we're talking about a horrific offense and really low volume. Like, I would rather take shots on the North Carolina guy, Blackwell, assuming that, like Green doesn't play or Lassane. I'm basically trying to pivot from these guys and be very careful with my lineups at the end of the day.
Is there anything in Iowa's backfield? They can't run the ball at all. Anything in the backfield?
No. I mean, no. Sorry. There's just really is not.
No, and I assume you're not playing Petrus.
No, they should pay you to play Petrus.
Well, the other guy, normally I would say they should play Padilla, but Padilla's in the negatives for the year, so that's frowned upon as well. I don't know who Joe Labas and Carson May. I'm sure they're watching the show. If they can hit the like button, it'd be appreciated because I'm giving them a shout out. How bad could they be? You would think they would just give one of those guys a chance.
They must be bad.
I mean, I guess so. Whatever. Let's get to the final game. I've got a couple things to say, all of extreme importance. First, your boys are coming up right after us. Laffy and Savoca breaking down some NFL matchups for you, so don't go anywhere after we bounce on out of here. And 2, because it's Thanksgiving. No, it's not Thanksgiving. That just happened. But it's all in the same thing. And this is Black Friday, Cyber Monday, all this stuff. We got deals on deals. We do this once a year where we give a truly crazy promo to give thanks and to get people in the ecosystem. We want you guys to be able to try out these tools. We want you guys to be part of the family. One of the ways to do that is to give you a chance to test everything out. $5 for a week of Stokastic Platinum. 90% off the normal price. It's usually $40. This is $5. Use the promo code THANKS. Thanks in capitals. You see it on the screen right there. Like I said, we do this. It's been an awesome year here at Stokastic and over at OddsShop or our betting where we're building. It's because of you guys. We're so thankful for it. We want to give you guys a chance. For some people who don't want to, splurge for the full $40, come in for $5 and see what you think. If you love these tools and you love all the things that we're mentioning on the show, the lineup generator is fantastic. It's improving every day. It's one of our new tools. It expires soon, so this would be the time to do it. Come in for the week at least, and then decide what you want to do. And when you're in there, hop in our Discord and say what's up as well. Me and Matt always in there hanging out. UCLA and Cal. UCLA, a hard-fought loss to USC. Still a very successful season, in my opinion. You've got DTR and Charbonnet, and they're playing a Cal team that stinks. Motivation, things like that, I don't know the answer. We've already had questions. Is DTR okay? Is he going to sit? What are you going to do with UCLA who has nothing to play for?
I'm playing Charbonnet. Letting it ride, man. I think he's going to be fine out there. I'm just guessing, so take this for what it's worth, but I think he's worth the gamble because of talent and workload and matchup. Cal is awful. I don't want to play a lot of the passing game, and I'm kind of not getting to as much DTR because of price. He's super expensive, and this is a run-heavy team at the end of the day. I think he needs to run quite a bit to get you there. So I'm a little light on DTR, a little light in the pass catchers, but love Charbonnet. He's one of my most owned players.
Bobo and Allen do seem a little premium on that outside. I want to talk about
fine
Cal.
If you want to stack.
Yeah, if you let me, it seems too pricey though to play DTR and Charbonnet together.
I think so personally.
Oh, here we go. Just right at the end, Finn expected to start. That's just lovely.
So So don't play Tucker Gleason.
Do not play Tucker. Toledo QB.
What time does that game start, Ben?
We've got Toledo starts at noon. It starts in 3 minutes. So there you go, everybody. Get Tucker Gleason out of your lineup. DeQuan Finn will return to the starting lineup today at Western Michigan. Finn missed last week with an ankle injury. That's what you got. So I'll have to revoke my fake doctor status. It's a shame. While you adjust that,
I only have 2 lineups with Gleason, so I'm good.
Beautiful. On the other side of this game, you've got a Cal team that, I mean, they've really struggled at times, particularly offensively. They can't get much going. Then at other times, they do score some points. So it's a team that's done it, but I'm just not sure. You've got Plummer who can't move at all. Is there anything that Cal can do that can cause any problems and factor into our lineups?
These pass catchers are awesome price-adjusted plays. So I do want to get to the pass catchers for sure. And I would rank them Hunter 1, Sturdivant 2, Anderson 3, if that makes sense. But these are very, very solid plays, just price adjusted. And it's because their volume's so good. And the reason you don't get a lot of the quarterback is sacks. That's it. He just takes a lot of sacks.
Yes, he does. And it adds up quite quickly.
Sure does.
Odd in the backfield.
He's viable. He's risky because they don't give him the full workload every single week. But if they're in competitive games, it's been him recently. I'm taking a couple stabs on him, but doesn't come without risk. Certainly risky.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can expect around 20 total touches from him. I don't think that's unreasonable in a game like this where they're a sizable dog, but it's not 40 points by any stretch of the imagination. 10.5 point home dog is something you can live with a 61 point total. Couple generic questions before we bounce out of here and turn it over to Luffy and Savoca. For running back, you mentioned you love Charbonnet, obviously a nice spend up. Is there another guy towards the top, or just in general? Is it Sanders? Is it Spears? Who else piques your interest at running back?
I have a lot of Evans, and I'll pull up my ownership. My highest owned running backs, I can tell you for a fact that Charbonnet is 1. Sanders is 2. You were right. Sorry, Ben. Samson Evans is 3.
Yeah, and I have no problem with him. Like I said, I bet Eastern Michigan. 7K left, best wide receiver.
Oh man, that is right out of Cowing's range and Singer's range. 7K.
Badger? It's not great.
It's honestly Jeremiah Hunter at 55, or probably Torrey Horton.
Yeah, I would
Tyler
bounce.
Scott is going to be. I like Antoine Green, honestly, if he plays at 67. Bit risky, but if he plays, you're looking at a good play.
Quick thoughts, because we're about to lock on Reynolds for Florida on FanDuel.
I'm playing a lot of him.
Boom. There you have it. Couple things, Roger. First time listening. Appreciate that you hopping in, and we appreciate all the love. Me and Matt love college football, and we love bringing the show each and every week. Lock is upon us, friends. Let's go USA. Just get 1 point today in the soccer world. Hope that happens. But for me, for Matt, for Mike behind the glass, we're going to bounce on out of here. If you have any questions, at Matt_Gajewski, at JazzRazDFS. Good luck, friends. Enjoy all the games today. And I don't get to say this too often. See you guys tomorrow for another Live Before Lock. Same time, same place.